One of the things that we're collectively not all that good at is paying attention to the feather, to the tickle from life. It's cliche. I don't know how old quote, and I don't know who said it first, but life will tickle us with a feather, and then it'll give us a little slap, and then it'll give us a proper little whack, and then it will throw a brick at us, and then it will throw a train at us. And unfortunately, life as it's been constructed tends to kind of compress us in our consciousness, in our emotions, and in our mental clarity. Um, and it tends to compress us to a point of explosion. We tend to pop, we tend to break. And that has been labeled as, midlife crisis, mental breakdown, uh, you know, name a term that is used by mass society for what it looks like when somebody crumples. Um, and life has taught us to do that, whether it's with our health, oh no, it'll be all right, I'll be okay, or whether it's with our mental faculties and our capacity, or whether it's with um, our emotional states. We tend to need to have a proper slap. And we've been conditioned this way through our schooling, which is very cerebral. We've been conditioned this way through, most of our parents didn't really understand the emotional world particularly. So they didn't give us necessarily the kind of love most people didn't experience as a child, the kind of love that a human baby requires. Nothing against any individual parents or anything. It's just the expansion of consciousness, and in terms of the uh, uh, different generations, there's mass populace awareness for different generations, and then there's obviously outliers and people that do individuate earlier, but collectively now we're being asked to individuate in ways that we never have before. Like, it's just, there's too much downward pressure in terms of suppression and trying to keep us small and keep us controllable. And then there's too much opportunity for us to not let go of a version of us that doesn't work very well, to allow something else to come in and take its place. But there's also so much distraction, and this, compounds the compression that I was talking about. That keeps us out of alignment, that keeps us out of flow, that keeps us out of our lane and out of clarity. So sorry, I'm just getting messages through, and I forgot to turn my phone off signal Wi-Fi. So when you find yourself in these situations where you're like, that something needs to change, and you're committed to not needing to let something big have to come along to actually stimulate the growth necessary. That's when you start paying more attention. That's when you quieten down life. That's when you start to remove noise and tune your life to a place where you can be more attuned to your own signal. Signal noise is a ratio that people talk about a lot these days, and entrepreneurs have been talking about for years now. Because when you do that and you do it with integrity, and you're doing it from a place of like truly looking to get into a higher level of alignment and a higher level of coherence with a version of you that has a different experience, it will give you that opportunity. Who you are and where you're at is what you then experience. So let yourself, and don't wait for a fucking train. It's like, I know some people quite close to me as well, very close to me, who have this challenge where it's like they're waiting for the next big thing to come along that they can then use as an excuse as to why they are where they're at and who they are, how they show up, etc. And sometimes those things come along and they don't have the diagnoses and the prognoses and so on that these people are necessarily expecting, or kind of the shadow side of them is craving. But they haven't learned how to stabilize themselves in the nothingness, in the void, to actually allow inspiration to come through. And so it's like one crisis to the next, and the kind of waiting for the next label they can use to identify with, that's an excuse as to why their life isn't shifting. uh, don't be that person. We don't need to get to crisis level. And by the way, I'm not like throwing stones in a glass house here. I'm fully aware of my own uh, uh, propensity to wait for something, not consciously necessarily waiting, but certainly unconsciously preparing by not giving attention to the tickles. And so, you know, I've been slapped in life fucking so many times, you know, and had rug pulls and been challenged in ways that I really didn't know I needed to be challenged. Um, but whenever I've come out the other side, and certainly now, I'm kind of in a transition period where I've been in the trenches building things and creating things and writing things for a long time now, and I'm coming into a place of, okay, I'm done. There's nothing left in my head now. Like, it's empty, in the best way, and it's now just time to do this, to speak to you, whoever you are, and to have a conversation with the world and go, look, I've been busy, I've been creating stuff. Now I'm talking to people, and I'm not very good at this yet, but the transition is edgy. Like, I pressed record on this, for example, 3 times already, and one of them was like a 4.5, 5 minute video. And it was okay, but I just got to a point where I was like, I don't care about this now. Like, this is not what I'm interested in. It's not carrying me. I'm not saying things that are stimulating me to say the next thing and then the next thing. And I'm not one to do scripts and all that kind of stuff. Sorry if there's any YouTube experts out there saying you need more structure and you need to script. I can't. It just cramps me up. I get all weird. Not weird in a good way. Weird in a cramped way. But this is also me doing exactly what I'm saying, which is this is all just uncomfortable. It's not like I'm scared of exposure. It's not like I'm scared of being seen. It's not like I'm scared of, or there's nothing kind of in resistance except that it's new and that it's a vulnerability. It's probably a vulnerability thing in some ways, but it's also an aspect of, like, last time I kind of put my head out, and it was quite niche to a specific kind of market. But I suffered massively. I got defrauded massively, personally and as a company. And that is, it creates certain patterns that certainly for me have taken a long time to overcome, certain patterns of limiting thought that can be quite unconscious for quite some time. But if life isn't working properly and you felt some tickles, but you didn't know that they were tickles, probably, quite often when we get tickled, we're just like, oh, I need to scratch it, as opposed to, what's tickling? Like, why is this here? And then we get a bit of a slap and we go, oh, well, life happens. And then we get slapped again. And at some point we go, well, they always come in threes. It's like, no, they don't. You can buy into whatever fucking voodoo you need to, but nothing is that predictable. It's just, it is, if enough people believe it and you believe it fully, then yeah, absolutely, you'll create that. But it isn't a foundation for how this reality works. And it's like, this whole thing, it's darkest before it gets light. It's like, well, yeah, but that's the pattern that I'm speaking to. All of these things are only true because that's what we've collectively had to experience, because we haven't been tuned into enough to pick stuff up earlier. If you think about it from like a major diagnosis for a disease or something, everyone's always talking about early diagnoses. But you can do the same within yourself. If you start being quieter and actually listening to the conversations going on in your head, and you start being quieter and you start actually paying attention to your body and, like, what is it trying to tell you? Is there pain that wants to be felt fully? Is there pain that needs a different awareness, except, fuck, this hurts and I don't like it and I'm in resistance to it? That's one form of recognition of pain, which is just, oh, I don't like it and I need to change this. But if you can breathe into it, if you've got pain in your, I don't know why I'm pointing at the side here. I'm good there, but if you might not be, then there's not just one way to observe and experience the pain. There's the higher awareness version of the same experience, which is, okay, this is here. Let me breathe into it and start getting curious about it, asking it, like, okay, what are you asking of me? What are you trying to show me or teach me? And it won't necessarily come in cognition straight away either. You might not get any thoughts, and it might just be more confusion, because quite often whatever part of your identity is fixed, that is keeping the pain, whatever that is, it might be a financial pain, relational pain, whatever part of your identity, that's fixed. So you're not going to be able to think your way through it. You're going to have to find a new way through, a new way in. And that happens through the body, through the breath. And what would usually happen, and this is why OEA just works throughout everything. OEA is my program. You can do a test below to find some stuff out and go through a process and start learning about OEA. But it's why it works no matter what the healing modality is or the type of coaching you do is or whatever. It's the energetic thread that runs underneath and through everything in your life, whether that's happening consciously, unconsciously, whether it's to overcome something, whether it's to create something, it still works. Like it underpins kind of every process of creation for good and bad that happens. But it's why first, quite often what happens once you do start breathing into something that is a blockage that you've recognized as a blockage. Stage 1 of OEA is get real. That's the getting real. Stage 2 is feel. And it's not that stage 2 being feel is necessarily like a programmatic way of doing it, although it's useful to take space and give yourself space to feel. It's just that tends to be what happens. It's the death of the part of your identity that was keeping the pain in a fixed place. It was keeping it identified as you in your current identity and lens of the world has been seeing it. And when you start breathing into it, when you start releasing it, you might then feel some big emotions. And this is okay. People are so scared of feeling things, but don't be scared. There's nothing there. It's just thoughts and feelings. And they can be the scariest thing in the world because you live in your reality, which is made up of thoughts and feelings. That's all that we experience, right? And visual effects. But fundamentally, when you close your eyes, all you've got left is your feeling experience of reality and your thinking experience of reality. You might still be able to hear things and so on, but it's still happening in your head. And how you interpret what you're hearing is still happening in your head. When you feel, you move whatever energy has been blocking. You move it. It starts to evaporate. It starts to transcend. It starts to, like, for me, when I quite often get like headbands, and I'll quite often get pain in my shoulders. I've got like old rugby injuries in my shoulder and lower back and stuff. And so for me, there's two areas that will often, if I do get like injuries, it's this shoulder and it's in the back here, and it's this like hip, lower back hip. When it happens though, all I do is I get quiet, I breathe into it. And usually I'll then feel something, and it's just an admittance of, sometimes it's actually, this really fucking hurts, and I need to cry and actually allow myself to cry at how much this is hurting, as if I was a child. But by doing so, I do it in private. I'm not trying to put that on anyone or have loads of attention for that. But by doing it and giving that to myself, I'm not avoiding anything. I'm not ghosting myself. And I'm allowing the energy to move and for source and life to then start moving through it. And so I then bypass the need for something major to come in relation to that shoulder or that lower back. And ultimately, I feel very soon in my future is a reality where neither of them are even a concern. And in fact, with my shoulder, it's the injury itself means that my shoulder's slightly set forward, and I have like just a load of like scar tissue and so on underneath my scapula here and above it as well. But I feel it, so it's slightly set forward. And I was doing some exercises yesterday or the day before, and I was feeling myself in like that movement slightly leant forward, and I was feeling a deeper level of symmetry between the right and the left, in both in how it felt, and I was looking at a mirror while I did it, but also in how it looked. And so I was realizing, okay, so the energy work I've been doing on and right side is masculine, shoulders are always around like the weight of the world around your shoulders and carrying the weight of the world, like that kind of energy of like how much you're carrying. And I've released so much of that, just energetically allowed myself to have zero responsibility. Not from I don't want to take responsibility in life perspective, but from my unconscious will take on all the responsibility there is to take on unless I check it. And that's a fucking tragic reality to live in, and a painful one, a very heavy and dense and slow and stagnant and challenging one, because I feel like everything is my responsibility, or it's not really a fault or blame thing. It's just it's two things. It's one, a conditioning from my childhood, very emotionally volatile environments that I felt as a kid, like I must change this, or this is my fault in some ways, my responsibility. But then as an adult, also having the comprehension that, we're each the essence of the divine. We're all made out of God, effectively. And so having the knowing that I am quite literally responsible for everything that I see happening, both in my reality and the world, because it's all part of me. It's all part of all of us. We're all one. Everything is one. So when you come from that place, if you're coming from a shadow lens, you will likely, like I have, take on a lot of density, a lot of heaviness. And that doesn't do any of us any favors either. So I have to be very, very critical with myself of this. I have to be very diligent, not critical, diligent, because it's very easy for me to take on a lot more than I have to, need to, should, etc. Like, it's just not a thing. It's just a negative, or just a flawed psychological pattern that keeps creating that reality for me. And so I've got a lot better at paying attention to the tickles and sometimes slaps. And it, not for too long, I haven't been experiencing the rug pulls that I was quite consistently experiencing for a period of time. And this is, I'm somebody, I've created large businesses in the past, been a partner in a company that was turning over 100 million and worth over 300 million. And we personally had 50 employees. The structure that we created had over 500 employees. I'm somebody who's been to reasonable levels in business, but I've also lived completely different, opposite lives. And my focus throughout all of it has been on this: is transformation, identity work, understanding what the mechanics are between our inner and the outer world. And so if I'm still struggling with this sometimes, and I still have to give myself, look in the mirror and truly pay attention to this. If you're watching this and you've got to 17 and a half minutes, the chances are you are too. So if you'd like to go further into this kind of work and really look at who you're being that's creating the kind of experiences that you're having, and asking yourself, am I getting fucking slapped by life right now? Or am I having bricks thrown at me and I'm really not paying attention? And if you're in that place, have a little look below. There's some resources there for you. And if you want to have a session with me, reach out.